The jungle was silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the warm, humid breeze. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie silver glow over the dense foliage. Rajah, a majestic male nightly tiger, prowled through the undergrowth, his golden eyes glinting with a predatory focus. He was a creature of power and grace, his sleek black and orange striped coat blending seamlessly with the shadows. Tonight, he was hunting, his senses attuned to the faintest sounds of prey. But something was off. The jungle felt wrong. The usual symphony of nocturnal creatures was absent, replaced by an unsettling stillness. Rajah paused, his ears twitching as a low, guttural growl echoed through the trees. It was a sound he had never heard before, a sound that sent a primal shiver down his spine. His muscles tensed, and his tail flicked nervously. He turned his head, scanning the darkness, but saw nothing. The growl came again, closer this time, and Rajah's instincts screamed at him to flee. But before he could move, a massive, shadowy figure dropped from the trees above, landing in front of him with a ground-shaking thud. It was a Predalien, a horrifying hybrid of predator and xenomorph. Its elongated, biomechanical skull gleamed in the moonlight, and its razor-sharp claws flexed menacingly. Rajah bared his fangs and let out a thunderous roar, but the Predalien was unfazed. It lunged at him with terrifying speed, its tail whipping through the air. Rajah fought back with all his strength, his claws slashing and his powerful jaws snapping, but the Predalien was too strong. With a final, brutal strike, the creature pinned him to the ground, its weight crushing him. Rajah struggled, his breaths coming in ragged gasps, but the Predalien's grip was unyielding. The creature leaned in close, its grotesque face inches from Rajah's. Then, with a sickening hiss, it extended a long, tube-like appendage from its mouth. Rajah's eyes widened in terror as the appendage writhed toward him, its tip glistening with some unknown fluid. He tried to twist away, but the Predalien held him firmly in place. The appendage pressed against his abdomen, and Rajah let out a guttural roar of pain as it pierced his flesh, burrowing deep inside him. The pain was excruciating, a burning, tearing sensation that made his vision blur. He could feel something being forced into him, something alive and writhing. The Predalien released him, and Rajah collapsed to the ground, his body trembling with shock and agony. The creature loomed over him for a moment, its glowing eyes studying him with an almost clinical detachment. Then, with a final hiss, it turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Rajah alone and broken. Rajah lay there for what felt like hours, his body racked with pain. Eventually, he managed to drag himself to his feet, his legs shaking beneath him. He stumbled through the jungle, his mind foggy and disoriented. He didn't know what had happened to him, but he knew it was something terrible. As he made his way back to his den, he could feel a strange, alien presence inside him, something that didn't belong. He tried to push the thought from his mind, focusing instead on the simple act of putting one paw in front of the other. When he finally reached his den, Rajah collapsed onto the soft earth, his body trembling with exhaustion. He closed his eyes, hoping that sleep would bring him some relief from the pain and confusion. But as he drifted off, he was plagued by nightmares, visions of the Predalien, of the thing inside him, of his body being torn apart from within. When Rajah woke the next morning, the pain had subsided, but he still felt wrong. His stomach felt heavy, and there was a strange, fluttering sensation deep inside him. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just the aftermath of the attack. But as the days passed, the sensation grew stronger, more pronounced. He began to notice changes in his body. His once lean and muscular frame was softening, his stomach swelling ever so slightly. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, but soon it became impossible to ignore. Rajah's belly continued to grow, the swelling becoming more pronounced with each passing day. He tried to hunt, but his movements were sluggish. His once formidable strength diminished. He could feel something moving inside him, something alive. It was a sensation he had felt before many years ago, when his mate had been pregnant with their cubs. He remembered how her belly had swelled, how he had felt the tiny movements of their unborn offspring beneath her fur. But this was different. This was wrong. The fluttering sensations grew stronger, more insistent. Rajah could feel the thing inside him shifting, pressing against his stomach from within. He spent his days lying in his den, his body racked with discomfort. His once proud and regal form was now distorted, his belly swollen to an unnatural size. He looked as though he were carrying a full-grown tiger inside him, rather than a litter of cubs. The weight of it was unbearable, and he could barely move without feeling a sharp, stabbing pain. As the days turned into weeks, Rajah's condition worsened. His belly continued to grow, the skin stretched taut and shiny. He could see the thing inside him moving, his stomach rippling and bulging with each shift and roll. It was as if the creature were trying to escape, pushing against the confines of his body. Rajah's mind was a haze of pain and fear, his thoughts consumed by the thing growing inside him. He thought back to his mate, to the joy they had felt when she was pregnant with their cubs. He remembered how they had cared for each other, how they had prepared for the arrival of their offspring. But this was nothing like that. This was a nightmare, a perversion of the natural order. He was a male, a predator, not a vessel for some alien abomination. The pain grew more intense, more constant. Rajah could feel the thing inside him pressing against his ribs, his organs, his very bones. It was as if it were consuming him from within, feeding on his body to fuel its growth. He could no longer eat, no longer sleep. His body was a prison, and the thing inside him was the warden. One night, as Rajah lay in his den, his body racked with pain, he felt a sudden, violent movement inside him. It was as if the thing had finally had enough, as if it were ready to burst free. Rajah let out a guttural roar of agony, his body convulsing as the creature pushed against his stomach with all its might. He could feel his skin tearing, his muscles straining to contain the thing inside him. And then, with a final, excruciating burst of pain, his belly split open, and the creature emerged. It was a xenomorph, its sleek, black carapace glistening in the moonlight. It let out a piercing shriek, its elongated head turning to regard Rajah with cold, unfeeling eyes. Rajah could only watch in horror as the creature pulled itself free from his body, its razor-sharp claws tearing through his flesh as it went. The pain was unbearable, but Rajah was too weak to fight back. He could only lie there, his body broken and bleeding, as the xenomorph stood over him. The creature hissed, its tail lashing through the air. It leaned in close, its face inches from Rajah's. For a moment it seemed as though it might strike, might finish him off. But then, with a final, disdainful hiss, it turned and disappeared into the jungle, leaving Rajah alone and dying. As Rajah lay there, his lifeblood seeping into the earth, he thought back to the life he had once known. He thought of his mate, of their cubs, of the jungle that had been his home. He thought of the Predalien, of the thing it had planted inside him. And as his vision faded to black, he realized that he had never been more than a vessel, a means to an end. He had been the belly of the beast, the womb for a creature that was not of this world. And now, as his life ebbed away, he could only hope that his death would bring an end to the nightmare. But deep down he knew it wouldn't. The xenomorph was out there, somewhere in the jungle, and it was only a matter of time before it found another host, another victim. The cycle would continue, the nightmare would live on. And Rajah, the once proud knightly tiger, would be nothing more than a forgotten footnote in the story of the beast's reign of terror.